everybody. Welcome back to a new edition of Dylan Box. I'm Ryan Harsch.
And I'm Chris LeRoy.
We are here to bring you some new music for this week. Chris asked me to pick a record, and I was thinking a live album, and there's so many to choose from, so I went with one that was, why don't you go ahead and show us what we have in there.
Okay. And Ryan's pick is Dylan and the Dead. Purchased for $6.99.
Ooh.
Back in the day. Very cool cover. So we're going to talk about Dylan and the Dead?
Yes. So my reasoning behind this was, my opinion, probably the greatest American single solo artist songwriter. Then you have probably one of the greatest American bands.
Oh yeah.
And both of them are very similar in a lot of ways. And so we're going to kind of look and see if this summit, if you will, is ideal. If it's, sometimes you can take a group of geniuses and put them together, but you're not going to have optimal results.
Right.
And so we're going to see if something like this was a great experiment, or if it worked, or what we thought about it.
That's a good premise.
I don't know. We have maybe want to kick things off here with just a little background. This is Bob Dylan, performing artist, 86 to 90 and beyond. Mind Out of Time. Author is Paul Williams. And he wrote there's a story in here on this record and on the tour. So just a couple quotes. Bob Weir, who's a guitar player for the Dead, said of the pairing, Bob Dylan was difficult to work with in as much as he wouldn't want to rehearse a song more than 2 times, 3 at the most. And so we rehearsed maybe 100 songs 2 or 3 times. Mickey Hart, drummer for the Dead, says we were trying to back up a singer on songs that no one knew. It was not our finest hour nor his. I don't know why he was even made into a record. And then Dylan, some years later, kind of because he's always kind of looking back at what happens many years later, he says, at the time of that tour, I couldn't even sing my own songs. There were so many layers and so much water had gone round that I had a hard time grasping the meaning of the songs. So, interesting. What do you know about the Dead?
I know a lot about the Dead. Of course, an incredible fan in my era. Everybody who had an album and had 4 albums, you had to have at least American Beauty or Working Man's Dead. You had to have that album, and so you realized that the Dead, even though later on they were much more a phenomenon as the kind of live and this improvisational strength, that Garcia and Hunter, there's some really good songwriting too, and so I sort of steeped in that kind of American Beauty album and loved the kinds of music or the kind of acoustic nature that they could bring to things, even though they started as the Warlocks and were very electric. Right. So a healthy respect for them. Wasn't necessarily a deadhead or follow folks around, but I love them on so many different levels that they're an American treasure and probably worthy of the adulation, not necessarily the kind of the mass audience that made their tours difficult when they were a little bit later in their career.
Right.
But certainly an incredible band. Certainly Jerry Garcia, super influential in just kind of that spirit of improvisation and being so good, but such a risk taker.
Right.
Man does not care if he hits a bad note. Does not care. Right. And when I would hear solos by Jerry Garcia, and I'm going, if he can do that,
right? What's going on here?
I can try that too.
Sure.
And his bluegrass background that influences that he's not just this kind of blues rockin' guy, although he could do so many different styles.
Right.
So you put that musicality together, did great songs with, especially with him and Robert Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
You have this rich tapestry and history of a band that still probably never reached all their potential because they had a lot of challenges going on keeping the band together, or
a lot of challenges,
health issues going forward. So totally dig the Dead. One of my favorite people in the world, a guy named Donald Fosdick, he would always come and see us at the Dangers when we had our nightclub called The Beat. And Donald was like, I gotta get you to see the Dead. Gotta see the
So
Dead.
did you go?
Didn't go.
I saw him twice.
Sorry, Donald.
Yeah.
But yeah, I might not have lived if I'd gone.
Yeah.
I might have just been kidnapped or I wandered away.
Absolutely.
But yeah, no, I'm a little bit sorry about that. But I hear their live music a lot. I listen to the Dead a lot. I do still today.
I mean, yeah, saw him a couple times in concert, really near the last year that Jerry was alive.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't all that, you know. He was flubbing a lot of lines. He was relying on a teleprompter, and the band just kind of weren't gelling because he was the center of that band. I mean, everybody. What I love about the Dead is everybody had a completely different musical background, and it made it work. You know, so you had a guy who was like a jazz guy and like a concrete abstract music, and you had a folk guy, you had, you know, big band kind of swing drummer, and you had a world drummer, and you had everybody, you know, and they all kind of made this stew in the right in the middle of the '60s, and it just worked. And they made it work, and you know, they had, like you said, a lot of ups and downs and a lot of challenges, but very endearing, you know, to what they did. But one thing I always noticed, and probably, you know, after this record, was they played a lot of Dylan, and they always played Dylan. Like, so it's like from the beginning, you know, when they were the Warlocks, they played Dylan songs.
Yeah. So it was a mutual admiration, and you know, I mean, all sorts of famous people have died, and Dylan would make a comment, or he might play a song. You could see when Jerry Garcia died, and you know, he made a statement, and that he was genuinely moved.
Right.
You know, I think he just felt close to him, and you know, anytime you read stuff about Jerry Garcia or see interviews with him, or there's a great DVD of Grateful Dog.
Oh yeah, David Grisman.
Yeah, of just their relationship and some of their music, and how Garcia would kind of just escape to be with him and do this other kind of simpler but more complex music. And Jerry Garcia, I think a lot of people just feel like he would be a cool guy to hang out with, he'd be a cool guy just to talk to, because he's very intelligent and but trippy, trippy cat.
Yeah, and he was into films and in Kerouac and things. So I mean, but just pretty out there.
Yeah.
But Dylan even says, in reading the story, you know, Dylan was at an interesting point in his life, and I think Garcia had gone to see him in Berkeley or something like that, and they talked backstage, and they just started kind of batting stuff around, and then Dylan was really attracted to. He was really attracted to what made the Dead work, and why they were just so, you know. So something says in there that he went to a show like incognito, and just kind of walking around and noticing that people in the audience were talking about, oh, they played this song 5 years ago. You know, we haven't heard this one in a while. Because one of the things that I'm into with the Dead is this, like, there's like a lot of stats, you know. So you know, I have books of this, like, you know, the last time, this is the longest version of this, and this is, it's like this all kind of fascinating.
Yeah, all categories down, and you can find any song, any place, anytime, how long.
Never played a show the same way twice, in terms of just the music and the set list. And so, you know, anyway, Dylan's walking around, he kind of sees this, and he's starting to think, well, like, the shows I've been doing have been the same set list. So he goes on tour with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and they go to Jerusalem, and 2 nights in a row they play 2 completely different shows. And he's thinking to himself, like, I haven't done this in years. And this is where it started. You know, this is just starting to talking to Jerry and looking at the Dead and looking at what made them work. So it's like he kind of found this at a crossroads in his career, and I think it changed the dynamic of what he did, but I also think it changed the dynamic of what they did a little bit too.
So, and all those things seem like positive outcomes.
Yeah.
Until you hear the album.
Yes.
And then it seems like that there's something that a little like what Paul Williams is saying in that quote about. There's something about how they put these songs together or didn't.
Right.
That he watched a Grateful Dead that had already gelled. They've been working for years, or he tours in front of Tom Petty's band, and the Heartbreakers, that's a gelled organization, and they play this
It's ready-made.
It's ready-made, but he, just as he didn't seem to fit all that well with the Tom Petty thing, this is even a bigger challenge for how are they going to gel? What do you think? Do you think it gelled at all?
I mean, to me, to hear, like, listening to it, first of all, is you have to look at the song choices.
Yeah.
And so the band, I mean, like, I think a lot of that had to do with Jerry, because he said, I like Joey. That's like, it says, let's do Joey, let's do Slow Train Coming, which is like, we talked about that already. Let's do Gotta Serve Somebody, which, and so you're bringing this stuff to the Dead fans who are maybe casual, like Dylan listeners, they're not going to know the deep cuts.
No, okay.
I'm not thinking.
Well, Joey,
maybe.
yeah.
I mean, some of those. So I mean, first of all, but then I've listened to the tapes. Like there's stuff out there, and you can find it, just the rehearsals, and it's just very sloppy, and it just doesn't like, you hear kind of early stages of stuff, and you're like, this is going to be really good.
Yeah.
Like Pet Sounds, or like
Yeah.
Smile Sessions. You're like, this is going to be great.
This is going to happen.
This is like, and you hear them and playing around. It's just like, I don't know, like this might not go, because it's just like there's so many songs, and then it's like, let's try this, and then Dylan's kind of messing up the words, and they're just, it doesn't seem like everybody's on board, because it's like, why are we doing this? The Dead, we've been around since Dylan's been around since 61, 62. Dead formed in 65. Like, do we need to do this? And so that's kind of what it feels like. It almost feels like a pointless exercise.
Yeah, and when they toured then, so there were a lot of songs to pick from. So I think part of the problem, I mean, it's the world's greatest cover. I remember when I was seeing it, I was going, wow, this would be
what's going on here?
Fun.
Slow
Here's
train
a train coming. Yeah, slow train's coming, and it's running over the skeleton guy. Dylan's looking pretty hip. He's got the little ZZ Top.
Yeah, he's got the lightning bolt. So
Lightning
it's like
bolt
you're kind of taking the Dead iconography.
Yeah.
So you got Skull and Roses, and then you got, what is that, like what era? Do you think that's Dylan in the 80s? No,
he's younger.
Yeah,
he's younger.
So that's
Dylan,
maybe the European tour gone electric.
Okay. Yeah. So and they're on the train together, and they're coming towards you, but when I first listened to it, put it on, I was just thinking, number one, I wonder if there are some better songs than the things that they chose to put on this album. And it starts off good. I think the first song is one of his Christian ones. Okay, Slow Train, and I think it sort of models what happens, and I think what goes a little right in the album. Would they get this groove, and if the Grateful Dead are anything, they're a groove band.
Yes.
They can set up a rhythm and a pulse, and so that's kind of going, and it's sort of working, and Dylan is kind of singing, he's still singing pretty strong, and then it gets to a spot, and you could tell they had not worked out how to end it.
Right, yeah.
So they start doing this, and they do this song after song, where they all start singing together, and not everyone in the Dead needs to sing. Later on,
Phil Lesh doesn't need to sing. Yeah.
But they're all singing it.
No business.
And then it just kind of slows down, and it's just like a train stopping.
Right.
And I remember just the first time I heard it, I go, well, that didn't end well. Let's go
try the next
go on
song.
to the next track. This chorus out happens about 4 times in 7 songs.
Yeah.
And all you ever hear is the other keyboard, Brett
Midland. Yeah.
All you ever hear is him singing and over-emoting over the top of Dylan.
Exactly.
So you were saying, turn his mic down.
Right.
In the mix, you can get him away from.
He sounds a little bit like Michael McDonald.
Way like Michael.
Like very yacht rocky. Yeah, right. Yeah, totally. Yeah, a little yacht rocky.
Fall. But yeah, totally doing Michael McDonald over the top of Bob Dylan.
Right.
Killing that train mid-sentence, and it's just when that happens the next time.
Yeah.
We said, are they going to all start singing? Oh, because they didn't practice this song, they're going to end all sorts of songs like this.
They're filling in stuff.
Yeah, so let's all just slow down, and we'll just kind of sing it out.
And they want to cut loose, so it's like, how are we going to end it? Because because we're talking songs. Like, Dylan's songs aren't jams.
No.
Even it's like regular. Because when the Dead played, they'd have a set of like pretty standard songs, and then they'd take a break, and then they and do whatever, and then come back and they do a set of their more open-ended stuff.
Space Jam.
And they cut out. They do let's do playing in the band for 20 minutes, and So with Dylan, you don't have that, and that's why when they played their Dylan songs, later on, they were always in the first set.
Part of even one of the few kind of negative things of Dylan's new album, one of the reviewers are saying, I wish they would just let the band cut out for a second or play something out or kind of take off with the music.
Right.
But he's always kept a very tight rein
Tethered,
because he's really delivering the message of the songs and the words. And so that kind of happens to where they start to get this groove. And I blame Mylan.
Brent.
Brent. I blame him. The other thing I don't, he was not my favorite keyboard player for the Dead by a lot.
Were you Pigpen guy?
Just anyone else.
Yeah.
Anyone else. Because of the tone.
Whichever one's lived.
Yeah. With the tone, and he played this kind of funky, like bad Casio sounding thing.
Yes.
And it would just, it saturates this album. You got this great guitar player. You got these great songs, and then you got this plink, plink, plink.
Right.
That's just all over the music. It's like they should have trapdoored that sucker out.
And they started using a lot of, I don't know if it's all over this album, they started using a lot of MIDI. So they started playing in let's make, and Jerry did it too, though. Let's make the guitar sound like a flute. And that's, and then you're pulling, let's make the keyboard sound like a chorus of angels. It just wasn't like really, you could tell the band, and that's like, as a Deadhead, I call myself that, like a avid Dead listener. At least, I don't go beyond like the 70s really for a lot of their stuff. Just
because of those sounds, and it's like bad samples,
and they're not doing well. Like they're not gelling.
You know, like Nightmares from Guitar Center.
Absolutely.
Like you go walking by the keyboard section.
Yeah, it's just you're playing with it, like piccolo, number 128. Okay, let's. You can make it sound like.
But and so. Those are some of the things that undercut the album even more, because I still enjoy the Dead playing his songs. And there are some other examples later, probably now we could get into.
Sure.
Jerry Garcia's.
I was going to bring that up. I said if you want to listen to the Dead and with Dylan, don't listen to this. Okay, like that. If it's $6.99,
go ahead.
Go ahead and drop $6.99.
Sure.
It's not like I would drop $6.99. I don't have this, but I'm letting you know. Like, don't go with this. The one to go with would be there's two examples.
Yeah.
So there's which was the one you have?
It's Jerry Garcia. It's like a double CD, and Jerry Garcia does Dylan essentially.
Right.
And there are just some incredible versions because Jerry understood kind of the heart of how to sing those songs, and his voice is a very plaintive voice, and he just finds his territory in it, and it's not rushed, and it kind of brought together this kind of little jammy feel thing that you're going to have with his voice, and it just makes for a better translation.
Right. Definitely. Does that one have Visions of Joanna?
It does.
That is like one of my favorite, because when the first time they played that, it was out of a Space Jam.
Oh.
And it just came out, like it just kind of materialized it almost, like when you hear it in context. And he's reading it off a teleprompter because it's so many words.
Yeah.
It's not, but it's like, it's wonderful. Like that one is good. And there's another one called Postcards from the Hanging. Grateful Dead plays Dylan. So that's more 80s, 90s.
And that's a pretty good album. It doesn't have the same spirit or the depth of the Garcia album.
Because that one's like different era. He's doing stuff in the 70s with Merle Saunders, so he's doing different eras for that one.
But again, very accessible. But one last thing about how this gets messed up. Because even I was listening to it, just to bone up for this, and I start really liking it. Every one of the songs are going, that's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And then
you're kidding yourself.
Then it gets on the spot. And then Dylan, again, he's trying to find himself in his voice. And it's very interesting, the comment in the Paul Williams thing. He says, I lost track of the songs, or I didn't know what they meant or how to sing them. There's some examples in here where he's trying really hard and just...
You can tell he doesn't give a crap, though.
Or just swinging a miss.
Yeah.
So he's trying to kind of
Well,
emote.
he's trying, but you can tell he doesn't give a crap.
Or-
right?
or-
he's just tired.
Yeah. Or it's like, what would Whitney Houston do with this line? And it's like, no, don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it. And so it's I don't know, it's a pretty reviled. People just really not like this album. Huh?
Yeah.
And it's sad to me because I tell you, when I saw that, I knew it was coming out, but when I saw that cover, I bought it that day.
It's a cool cover.
Dang, this is going to be
Probably
so
the
much.
best part of the record, folks.
Oh,
It's the
and I
cover,
was
unfortunately.
But I was so sad that it just didn't. Sometimes
And
it's
the back cover is like, the train's leaving the station.
Yeah, they
kids.
could've put that in the
It's
front
like,
cover.
Yeah, keep going. Don't stop.
Don't stop.
Don't stop.
Don't stop
Let's
to
put
be
this
hit
back
by
in the
this
box.
train. So he's going back in the box.
Sir.
This is a first.
Yes.
This is the first where the
We did a refund.
where it
My
just goes.
Do you want your $7 back?
Okay. Well, that concludes our take on Dylan.
Anything
Yeah.
else you want to say about it?
Only
You know?
it's just that I'm still glad they did it.
Yeah.
Because it, I think in theory when they talked, the album that they perceived just didn't get recorded, and maybe it wasn't the time, or maybe Dylan really isn't going to be ever a part of a jam band.
Yeah.
He's on a different track. He's
Absolutely.
on a different track.
And he's more aligned with like Robert Hunter, because I think didn't Hunter write, and Robert Hunter is a songwriter for he paired with Jerry in pretty much every song.
Right.
I think Robert Hunter wrote a couple songs for Dylan.
Oh yeah, they wrote songs together
Silvio
on
or-
Silvio on the what you got what is it? Got to change my way of thinking. What's the name of it? In the groove.
Another
Get
one,
out of
Down
the
in the
groove.
Groove.
Down in the groove.
We'll do that.
He
one.
also did. Yeah, he also did wrote almost all the lyrics about 3 albums back. Dylan. I'll have to remember the title for it too. I mean, so he. It's not good as I've been. It's 4 albums back. 2
Yeah.
albums before the Sinatra stuff happened.
Okay.
Yeah. After Modern Times,
Mm-hmm.
whatever
I know
that
what you're
album
talking
is,
about. Yeah.
he wrote tons of
Tip
them.
my tongue.
Yeah, he wrote tons of those. Like, well, all we do in the segment, we just float the album.
Yeah, like hey,
Oh, that
you
album.
guys do the work. We're not going to sit here and look it up on our
Remember
phones.
every
Yeah, that's not
thing
our
on
job.
the planet. Exactly.
We're here to trash a Dylan album. That's
Yeah,
what we're
no,
doing.
Really,
this
we're gonna
week.
have to
Yeah.
pick an album. This is
Yeah.
one of the rare albums that I think that people would really go after. But I'm still so glad that they tried it.
Yeah.
Now they can't. So that's the thing.
Do you think it would have been more effective if they put out like they do now, like maybe a full show, just so you kind of get a because I mean, according to Mr. Williams here, there is like maybe out of, and they didn't do a ton of shows, so I don't think they did more than 20 together.
Yeah.
It was like 2 sets of the Dead, and then they bring out Dylan.
Yeah.
Maybe a full show though would have been maybe a little bit. He said there's actually a really good show.
Yeah.
But
No,
it's-
I'm sure it happened, and it just that format or the company probably was going to spring for that kind of at this era.
Right.
Which would have to be at least a double album or a triple album to kind of capture the spirit of that. That would have been a much more interesting because the 7 songs and one of them's Joey.
Yeah.
You're already kind of cutting yourself a little bit short in terms of the songs.
Absolutely.
But
Oh, the 10-minute song.
yeah,
Come on.
slow train, fast train,
Yeah. Leaving the station.
out of there.
Say goodbye to that one. Mm-hmm. But yeah, worth looking into for all that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we're good with that
Mhm.
one. So Maria, do you want to do them in segments then?
Sure.
Okay.
Do you guys want to close this?
Okay. Well, yeah. Okay. Ready?
So
You tell us when.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
So that's it for this one, everybody. We're very glad you joined us again. Dylan and the Dead. Our recommendation is to go with Jerry Garcia plays Dylan or whatever it's called.
Or postcards as a hanging.
Look it up. Yeah, our postcards of the hanging. So next time we'll be back with something to grab your attention. I'm sure some more obscure Dylan that's not talked about enough.
Yeah.
But until then, I'm Ryan Harsch,
And I'm Chris LeRoy.
and thank you for joining us on Dylan Box.